Welcome and well met, all my fellow adventurers. Thank you for joining me here today for our next lesson, where we dive once more into the history of Hydaelyn, or Etheirys if you prefer. This is going to be part 3, where we will be picking up where we left off from our last lesson, so please sit back as we discuss the Calamity of Lightning and the Second Era. So before we jump right straight into the Second Era, let's have a quick recap from our last lesson, where we discussed the Calamity of Wind as well as the First Era. After the First Calamity, it is considered the beginning of modern history, with mankind leaving the Stone Age behind and moving towards the Age of Kings and Queens over vast territories, where we had truly entered the Age of Man, with basic sciences and metalworking skills being discovered, and we were on the cusp of entering a time of war as well. With the establishment of different territories and the rise of different empires, the rulers of these lands began to have tools built not for farming or building, but rather for fighting. Kings were eager to expand their domains and pillage their neighboring kingdoms, so constant wars were being waged during this time. Despite all of this, however, mankind was thriving like never before and quickly began to populate the land. The problem was, with all this surplus of people, it was difficult to house and feed them all without terrible cost to nature. Forests were felled and fields were planted in their place, while mountains were gutted and forges burned constantly to forge weapons until the skies were polluted. This continued on for several years, with nature suffering, and it even led to the extinction of many different plants and animals, until finally everything was set for the next calamity. It is now theorized that the Ascians were able to sow the seeds of such chaos and discord amongst the kings, solely encouraging these wars from the shadows and the destruction of the land to further tip the scales to trigger another shard rejoining with the source, which was what led to the destruction of the 12th shard and the Calamity of Lightning. For when the wars were at their worst, nature finally pushed back against mankind to such a degree that it was believed that the gods themselves were trying to bring about the end of the world. Mountains of fire erupted from all over, creating clouds of smoke and ash so dense that sunlight could not hope to shine through. The land was cast into a seemingly endless darkness before lightning bolts began to fall like rain. And it just would not stop. This lightning ended up burning fields, boiling lakes, and even destroying most of the man-made buildings and castles in a matter of days. But still, it did not end. Lightning rained down with its fury, not just for a few weeks or even a few months. This lightning is said to have continued for an entire year and a day before the skies finally cleared. The people of this era were left with no choice but to abandon their homes and flee underground into caves or any other similar types of shelters to try to escape the destruction. But though many were able to find safety from the lightning in such places, what was waiting for them inside these caves was not salvation, but rather death. For soon, food ran out and water became scarce, leading to these shelters to become breeding grounds for pestilence and plague. Mankind had truly reached a dark time, with many believing that this was truly the end, either death by lightning outside or rotting away inside. As the people sat trapped in the darkness, watching their families meet slow, painful ends, they concentrated their efforts on the one path left to them: prayer. Theologians believe it is this mixture of desperation and focused prayer that gave way to the very first magical incantations, both for defending their people, but also for healing the sickness that they were plagued with. Upon seeing such miracles, many came to believe that this was surely a sign from the gods that things would be all right so long as they kept faith in the divine. Suddenly, those who were able to make the connection to such miraculous gifts came to believe that they were truly chosen from the gods, and came to be looked upon by others for guidance and comfort. It is believed that this primitive magic was what helped mankind to endure the entire year of lightning until the skies finally cleared and the people were able to emerge from underground at long last. Once the Calamity of Lightning was over, did we enter the Second Umbral Era, which seemed to be relatively short and quickly moved into the Second Astral Era. How long ago this was is hard to say. I have looked all over, but none of the tomes I studied gave us an exact timeline of when all this happened. But I would give a guess between 10 to 8,000 years ago as a reasonable theory. But as we move from the second Umbral era into the second Astral era, we will call this time as Faith in the Above. For once the people emerged to rejoin the world outside, they brought with them their new knowledge of magic and began to share it with other survivors, meeting many who were able to discover similar gifts while underground, and magic began to make a true presence in the world. Meanwhile, those who showed such talent in magic were risen to positions of power within their communities, who accredited the ending of the previous era with the faithless kings and their greed to be the cause of their suffering. They instead claimed that only through faith in the divine could they be spared from suffering another tragedy. So any previous kings or rulers that survived the calamity were quickly removed from power as the first organized religions were established. In only a few years, the land began to recover and the previous kingdoms were rebuilt, but with the people not only more mindful of respecting nature, but also entire theocracies replacing the old monarchies. Meanwhile, many men and women were eager to prove their faith, and churches commissioned the construction of countless cathedrals and temples, which rapidly advanced stonemasonry, inspiring many architects to conceive techniques that many would think would defy the laws of nature. Not only that, the people also perfected the arts of painting, while goldsmithing became a true trade during this time, as they would continue to honor their gods through paints and crafting items out of gold and precious jewels. This was also a time where forgers were able to conceive in the creation of steel to help protect their church's constructs, thus bringing about the arrival of more advanced tools for future crafts. Etheirys entered a true renaissance of the arts, where the second era and entire kingdoms thrived and flourished from it, as well as magic truly beginning to make more advancements, discovering ways to forge tools to help enhance such spells that were continuously being conceived. It was discovered that the magic from rods and staffs were better suited for offensive spells, which were more elementally pulled towards the elements of fire, ice, and lightning, while canes and wands could be better used for defensive and healing spells, which were more elementally pulled towards water, earth, and wind. Even the incantations that would later form the foundation for the arcanists could have begun here as well, though the first records of grimoires and codexes seem to hail more from the South Sea Isles. It is possible that they were conceived there and later brought over as magic continued to be developed and studied, or vice versa. It could be that the first schools of magic were also created during this time, though perhaps for only a select few were allowed to learn, such as high-ranking members of the church, for example. All that anyone can tell you about this era was that it seemed to be a time of peace and prosperity. But eventually, the Ascians were willing to try and plant the seeds of chaos once again. Churches became corrupted as they grew in power, and those of the highest ranks soon became as powerful as the kings that ruled before them. The different churches began to disagree over which religion was the true religion, and thus did this era descend into an age of holy wars, witch hunts, and massive genocide. Their desire for control led mankind down a dark path that set them upon the eve of the third Umbral calamity, the Calamity of Fire. And that is it for today, class. I know that it is a bit short compared to the previous lessons, but unfortunately that is all that we currently know of the second Umbral era, the second Astral era, as well as the Calamity of Lightning. So thank you for joining me here today and for listening in to another lesson. I hope you all came to really learn something new. I highlighted the major things to remember about this lesson right here, so you can quickly reference that if you need to. But otherwise, I hope that you are enjoying these lessons upon the history of the world as we know it. In the next lesson, we will be discussing more of what led to the events of the Calamity of Fire, as well as the third Umbral era and the third Astral era, which is where we will be learning much more about the infamous Allagons, as well as the rise and fall of their empire. Anyway, everyone, that's it for now. If you like this video, please leave a like and subscribe down below for more videos like this one. Of course, I'm not going to make you. And I hope that you look forward to the next lesson. So until next time, everyone, may you walk in the light of the crystal.